If your real estate business feels unstable, even though you're busy every single day, this video is going to feel uncomfortable. And before you assume this is about effort, discipline, or motivation, it's not. Your calendar is full, your CRM looks organized, and you're actively paying for online leads, but your results still feel inconsistent. This video is for you. Because most agents who feel stuck aren't doing the wrong things. They're doing the right things inside a structure that quietly leaks. The reason for this is so dangerous is because nothing ever feels like it breaks. There's no explosion, no obvious failure, no moment where you can point and say, that's where it went wrong. Things don't just happen. A lead doesn't respond, a conversation fades, a deal never materializes. And because there's no rejection, you don't feel urgency. You just moved on. Most agents believe deals are lost during big moments: negotiations, objections, price conversations, closing calls. And those moments feel important because they're loud. There's pressure, tension, and emotion. So that's where most agents focus. They focus on the scripts, they practice objections, and they try to get better at closing. And none of that's wrong, but it's not where most deals are actually lost. In fact, by the time a deal reaches those moments, its outcome's usually already decided, not emotionally, structurally. Here's the uncomfortable truth: most agents aren't losing deals because they can't sell. They're losing deals before selling ever becomes necessary. Before a real conversation even happens, before the prospect ever says yes or no, and the reason most and the reason almost no one fixes this is because it doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like bad luck. It feels like the market. It feels like they weren't serious anyway. But if you're paying for leads and your business still feels unstable, there's a very specific place where momentum is leaking, and almost no agents are looking there. Once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. And more importantly, you'll finally understand why effort hasn't created consistency. See, most agents think they already know why deals fall apart. They blame the market, the lead source, the platform, or even the prospect. And sometimes they blame themselves. They oftentimes say things like, I need to follow up better. I need more to be more consistent. I need to respond faster. And on the surface, those explanations feel reasonable, but they're incomplete. Because if those were the real problems, then the hardest working agents would feel the most stable. But they don't. Here's what actually happens: an agent has a bad week, and a few leads go quiet. A few conversations stall. A deal that felt promising in the beginning of the week just disappears. And instead of tracing the loss, they generalize it. They say, leads are getting worse. People aren't serious right now, and the market has shifted. See, those explanations feel comforting because they remove responsibility without forcing investigation. But ask yourself this honestly: if the problem were really the leads, or the market, or even the platform, then why do results fluctuate week to week? Why does one week feel smooth and another feel chaotic with the same inputs? You see, the same effort, same lead source, even the same scripts. That inconsistency is the clue. Most agents are trying to solve a timing problem with effort based solutions. They think, if I just try harder later in the process, I'll make up for it. But effort applied after momentum leaks is always weaker. You can't recover urgency once it's gone. And if this is true, if deals are being lost before real conversations even happen, then no amount of persuasion later will ever fix it. This is why being consistent never works the way people expect. When someone tells you just be more consistent, what they really mean is remember more things, respond perfectly, never miss a window. And frankly, that's not strategy, that's willpower. And willpower doesn't scale. It's also why CRMs feel helpful but don't solve the problem. CRMs are meant to organize the information. They show you what happened, but they don't protect what's happening right now. A reminder tomorrow does nothing for momentum today. Organization creates clarity. Protection creates consistency, and most agents confuse the two. Think about this. If consistency came from effort alone, the busiest agents would feel the safest. They don't. They feel reactive. They feel like everything depends on staying on top of it. And the moment life happens, a showing runs long. A client needs attention. A day gets full. That momentum leaks. Not because they don't care, because the system requires perfection. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most agents don't have a lead problem. They don't even have a follow-up problem. They have a fragility problem. Their business works, but only when everything goes right. They have perfect timing, perfect memory, and perfect availability. It's not a system. That's a gamble. So, if your business feels unstable, it's not because you're doing the things wrong. It's because the most important moments are still unprotected. And until that changes, effort will always feel heavier than it should. Now let's talk about the exact place where most real estate deals quietly die. Not where most agents think they die, where they actually die. They don't usually fall apart during negotiations. They don't usually fail because of objections. And they don't usually disappear because someone said no. Most deals die before any of that happens. They die in transition, specifically in the transition between a lead showing interest and a real conversation actually starting. This is the most fragile moment in your entire business, and almost no one protects it. Here's why. When a deal fails later in the process, you feel it. There's a conversation, a rejection, and there's a moment where you can point and say, this is where the deal fell apart. But when a deal dies here in silence, nothing explodes. No one says no, no one objects, and no one pushes back. There's just nothing. And silence feels harmless. Silence doesn't trigger urgency. And when someone says no, you respond. And someone objects, you adapt. And when someone goes quiet, your brain just fills in the gap. You tell yourself, they must be busy. They weren't serious anyway. Or they'll reach back out if they want to. Those assumptions are reasonable, but they're also dangerous. Because nothing feels broken when nothing gets broken. Nothing is fixed. Let me walk you through a common scenario. The lead comes in and you see it. You respond later. Not late, just later. You ask a qualifying question and the lead, they don't reply. So you follow up the next day. Still, nothing. At this point, most agents do something subtle. They downgrade the lead. Not consciously, subconsciously. They stop expecting a response. They stop prioritizing it and they move on. And because there was no rejection, it doesn't feel like anything failed. But something did fail. Momentum doesn't disappear, it decays. It fades. And once it fades, it doesn't come back on its own. Now, here's why this matters more than most agents realize. If this happens once or twice a week, it's not a small issue. It's not bad luck, and it sure isn't the market. That's multiple deals per month quietly leaving your business before they ever feel real. And because they disappear silently, they don't trigger urgency. They just slowly erode consistency. It's also why busy agents are especially vulnerable to this. When you're busy, silence doesn't feel threatening. You're with a client, you're in a showing, and you're handling another deal. So when a lead doesn't respond, it doesn't bother you. You assume if they were serious, they'd wait. But urgency doesn't wait. Urgency decays. Here's the trap. You don't notice the loss because nothing dramatic happens. You still have the conversations. You still close deals. You're still busy. So the system feels like it's working. But quietly, consistently, momentum is leaking. This is why agents feel like they're doing everything right, but their results still fluctuate. Some weeks feel smooth. Other weeks feel chaotic. It's the same effort, same lead source, and the same scripts, completely different outcomes. That inconsistency isn't random, it's structural. Most agents never trace instability back to this moment because it doesn't hurt. It doesn't embarrass you. It doesn't even feel like failure. It just disappears. Here's the most important reframe in this entire video. Silence is not natural. Silence is a decision point. It's the moment where momentum is either captured or lost. And most agents let it leak without ever realizing it happened. So once you see this, a lot of things are going to start making sense. Why follow-up feels heavier than it should. Why CRMs feel organized but ineffective. Why effort hasn't created stability. Because effort is being applied after the moment has mattered. You're not losing deals because you're bad at sales. You are losing deals because momentum is fragile, and fragile things require protection. At this point, most agents already think they know the solution. They tell themselves, I just need to follow up more. I need to be more consistent. I need to stay on top of my CRM better. So they add the tools. They tighten the reminders. They build sequences. and they promise themselves they'll respond faster. And for a short time, things actually improve. But then life happens. Here's the part that no one likes to admit. CRMs don't fail because they're bad tools. They fail because they're built to organize information, not protect momentum. A CRM can tell you what happened, who responded, and what's overdue. It cannot preserve urgency. A reminder tomorrow does nothing for momentum today. And this is why agents feel confused. They're doing everything right. They have the systems, they have the follow-up plans, and they have the structure. But structure still relies on memory, availability, and perfect timing. And the moment a day gets busy, momentum leaks. Let's be honest about consistency. When people say just be more consistent, what they're really saying is never miss a moment, always be available, and always respond perfectly. That's not strategy, that's pressure. And pressure doesn't scale. If consistency came from effort, the busiest agents would feel the safest. Matter of fact, they don't. They feel reactive. They feel like everything depends on staying on top of it, whatever that is. And the moment they're not, a showing runs long, a client needs attention, or a day fills up, that momentum decays. This is the burnout loop. So you try harder, you get temporarily better results, so you relax slightly. Things slip up again. Not because you stop caring, but because the system required perfection, and perfection is fragile. Here's the core problem. Most agents are trying to solve a timing problem with organize Most agents are trying to solve a timing problem with organization tools. And organization creates clarity, protection creates consistency. They're not the same. Think about this carefully. If your business requires you to notice every lead instantly, respond at the perfect time, never miss a window, then your income is tied to how well you perform under pressure. That's not stability, that's stress. And this is why most smart agents still struggle. Not because they don't know what to do, but because the system depends on them being perfect every time. And eventually, no one is. And here's the uncomfortable realization. Most agents don't have a lead problem, a script problem, or even a motivation problem. Matter of fact, quite the opposite. They have a fragility problem. Their business works only when everything goes right. And anything that works only when everything goes right will always feel unstable. Until the moments that matter most are protected automatically, effort will always feel heavier than it should. At this point, one thing should be clear. Your inconsistency isn't coming from a lack of effort, and it's not coming from a lack of leads. It's coming from the fact that the most fragile moments in your business are still exposed. So, now let's talk about what actually fixes that. When I say protection, I don't mean more follow-ups. I don't mean need I don't mean more reminders, and I definitely don't mean you trying harder to stay on top of everything. Protection means this. When interest shows up, something happens immediately, every time. Protection means the moment someone raises their hand, momentum is acknowledged, direction is set, and the next step is clear, not later. Not when you're free, immediately. Because momentum doesn't wait. A lot of agents hear this and think the solution is speed. They think, so I just need to respond faster. Speed helps, but speed alone is still fragile because speed still depends on you being available at the exact right moment. Protection removes that dependency entirely. Let's compare two situations. First, unprotected. A lead comes in, you respond when you can, you ask for a question, and they don't reply, so the momentum fades. You follow up later, and nothing happens. Second, protected. A lead comes in, they receive an immediate response, so the expectations are set. They're guided to the next step, and momentum has somewhere to go. Same lead, different structure, completely different outcome. And this is why protection feels simple, but is rarely implemented correctly because it requires design. It requires deciding in advance what happens before interest appears, and it requires letting go of manual control. You see, most agents don't do this because they'd rather stay busy than build something stable. When momentum is protected, everything downstream improves. Fewer leads go cold, follow-up feels lighter, conversations happen faster, and results become predictable. You stop wondering whether this will be You stop wondering whether week will be good or bad because the system absorbs variance. This is also where mental relief shows up. Most agents don't realize how much energy they spend checking their phones, refreshing inboxes, wondering if someone will reply. When momentum is protected, anxiety drops. Not because you care less, but because fewer things depend on you remembering. It's not a marketing upgrade, it's an operational one. It's the difference between reacting to leads and directing them. And once that shift happens, everything else becomes easier. There's one more thing that needs to be said clearly. This is where most agents stall. They understand the problem, they see the leak, but they still try to fix it themselves inside systems that were never designed to protect momentum. So, what happens? Months later, they're still busy, they're still following up, and still wondering why income feels unstable. Because knowing what needs to happen is not the same as having it installed correctly. Structure doesn't make you lazy, it makes effort effective. So, if you're still watching this, one of two things is true. Either this doesn't apply to you, or this described your business more accurately than you expected. And if it's the second one, then you already know something important. This isn't a motivation problem. You don't need to work harder, and you don't need more discipline. You don't even need another reminder system. What you need is fewer moments where momentum is allowed to leak. Most agents never fix this because they see it clearly. They keep adjusting tactics inside a fragile structure. They change the scripts, they change the platforms, and they change the tools they use. But the structure still stays the same. And as long as the structure stays fragile, results will always feel temporary. So at some point, every serious agent needs to make a decision. Do you want your income to depend on memory, timing, and effort, or on structure? Because once momentum is protected, everything changes. Follow up feels lighter. Conversations happen faster. Weeks feel more predictable. Not because you're doing more, but because fewer things are left to chance. Here's what I'll offer you. If you're actively paying for online leads and you want to know whether your follow-up process is actually protecting momentum, DM me the word check. We'll walk through your process together and identify exactly where deals are leaking before they ever feel real. It's not a sales call. It's a diagnostic conversation. So if nothing's broken, you'll know. If something is, you'll see it clearly. Either way, you leave with certainty. And just let's one thing be clear. It's not for everyone. If you're not buying leads, this doesn't matter yet. And if you're not actively working deals, this isn't the priority. But if you're generating interest and still feel like income fluctuates more than it should, this conversation will be useful. Because once you see the exact point where momentum breaks, you can't unsee it. DM me check. Let's see whether your effort is actually being protected.